Welcome back, lovely ladies and gentlemen, to
Wait, what?
Sports. It feels so good to say that after having a week off. We missed you guys. I'm Gina.
I'm Amy.
I'm Dr. Robinson.
And we are back after a 1 week hiatus. We apologize that we didn't get another show out to you guys, but we had some unforeseen circumstances come up. So we were on a little mini 1 week vacay, but we're back in action, full force.
Except at this time, because, again, unforeseen events,
Yes.
we are actually going to let you guys in on, like, our production meeting. You're getting a behind the scenes today.
Yeah. So I feel like a lot of shows don't do that, do they? It's like always got to be this pristine, perfect.
Yeah, they don't generally do a lot of...
I mean, Family Guy does it.
That's a cartoon.
They actually did a live reading, actually.
Yeah.
Well, in general, like with
There are-
podcasts and stuff like that.
There are a lot of shows that will do that as, like, a, dummy reel, or, they've got it sitting back there. They sometimes will put out kind of like how Disney does all of their stuff at the end of the movies with,
True.
The bad lines and whatnot. But
I mean, we're doing a whole episode of just like how our process works, and we're
Right.
figuring out all the details and stuff to talk about.
basically because
And they torment me, so,
Yeah, you're gonna get a double dose. So that's gonna be a lot of face grabbing
God.
today.
Yeah, so Eli usually only joins us via text for our meetings, and so he doesn't get a full dose
Right.
of how we actually hash out all of the things that we're going to talk
Or
about.
like he'll randomly call me while we're talking, or I'll be like, "Oh, maybe Eli knows," and we'll randomly call him for 5 minutes. But you don't get the full like impact. You don't feel it.
Oh, okay.
In your,
I
you don't
have
feel
to-
it
I
in
have
your
to feel it.
shanana.
God, don't say that. I hate that.
I know. So there's this guy on what station is it? It's the gospel station.
92.4.
Something like that.
Or-
And his name is Willie Mo Jr. and he always goes.
Willie Mo is Willie Moore Jr.
He says Willie Mo. He doesn't say his whole name.
Okay, yeah, just sometimes it says
Okay,
his
so
name.
anyway, during the show, he always got to argue with me. During the show, at points, he'll be like, "All right, I feel it down in my shanana." And he hates it. And I don't know why, because I would say that all the time. And now I'm going to, because it annoys him so much.
Keep on saying. I'll ring
so
this damn
You
bell.
gotta ring the bell a lot today, so
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not fazed by your bell. Amy's like, "Oh my God." This is a typical conversation between me and Eli.
Again, like I said, this is where you guys get to see the nitty-gritty, or hear the nitty-gritty of how we do this. But I just figured that since we hadn't had a chance to talk about what we want to go over in the next several shows, we could do this for you guys, and we'll give you guys an insight into how we choose to talk about things and how we actually go through the process, because a lot of times we've had some feedback about the fact that it sounds like Amy is
Doing all the talking.
Amy has all the answers, whatever. And really what it is that Gina and I will sit down and she'll ask me all these questions. We write down the questions. I go find the answers. I've got all the answers in front of me. And by the time we record, Gina's forgotten her questions.
Because I asked so many of them. I can't remember half of what I
So then
asked.
it's Amy trying to pull the questions back out of Gina again.
But you know what? I'll also say, when I came up with the idea for the show, because I just Eli loves sports so much. In case you guys don't know, me and Eli are together. We're like a thing. So he loves sports so much, and I always feel like he has conversations with me, and I don't know what's going on. Like I can fake the funk to a certain degree, but as you guys have heard, he likes to go into details where my brain starts to just kind of go. You ever seen that Simpsons episode where Homer zones out and there's a little bird in his head doing the dance? And that's how I feel. Like my brain just essentially kind of turns off until it hears something that sounds familiar, and then it clicks back on. So when I came up with this idea, I was like, who can I ask who would really be able to, first of all, have a passion for sports? Whether she likes them or not, she'll still talk about them. And who has that ability to find information, because that's what it is. You guys have experienced during the course of these 20-ish something episodes that we've covered sports that we don't know a whole lot about, but because Amy is the person she is, she's a researcher to her very core. I think I said that on the first episode. So when I thought about who could I do the show with, first of all, who I would have fun with, who would make this interesting, but who could also help me to find the information, she was the first person that came to mind, because I always ask her it's not even sports related all the time, but I always have a question, and she usually has an answer because her brain is like an elephant. I don't know where all the information gets stored, but it's in there.
So I will tell you that I'm kind of like my father in some ways, where my father has this saying about, how our brains work and all the information that his brain stores, my brain stores.
Mm-hmm.
And he has said for years that, at some point in time, some really, really vital, important piece of information is going to pop out one ear as soon as I shove another piece of new information in one. So
The visual.
At some point in time, I'm going to have, new information coming in one side and old stuff going out the other.
Right. That's
but
funny.
Because I will run out of room. But, yeah, I mean, as far as your visual goes, I always go to, the episodes of where Homer's brain walks out on him.
Yes.
And he's just like, I feel like you're in a conversation with Eli, which, by the way, that's the other reason she chose me, is because I can pick on Eli just as well as she can.
Sometimes better. Like, I feel inadequate when you bust certain things out, and I'm like, man, one day when I grow up, you think you're getting it now?
Really?
By the way, y'all, I wish we were taking pictures of Eli's reactions right now.
Really?
We love you, Eli. We love you. We wouldn't tease you if we didn't.
You look so disgusted.
You know that. But okay, so
Focus.
Anyways, I feel like there are times when you're in conversations with Eli, and if you say sure, he's going to keep going on, and you're going to get lost and you're going to tune out, but you don't stop yourself, and your brain goes,
Mm-hmm.
"That's it, I'm out of here." Thunk, 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 down the stairs.
Gone. Right out the window.
Don't say sure. Don't say sure. Don't say sure. Sure. Thunk, 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 thunk,
Dun,
thunk.
dun, dun, dun. And I feel like because he cares about it so much, like I'm like, I want to learn, I want to understand, and I do enjoy watching football, for example. But there's things about football where just like, I know how they score, I know how it's played on a field, I know there's people running around. You ask me any more specifics about that, you might not get much.
Right, and honestly, I'm going to say, casual fan, that's actually a very good start. And we are getting ready to talk about football, and that's what our production meeting is going to be about, actually.
Yes. That was a good segue.
Ball.
The foosball, as they say on what was that, Waterboy? You ain't playing no foosball. I do that to people sometimes just to see if they catch it, and they never
Ladies
do.
and gentlemen, you see what I deal with on a daily basis. If you're hearing this, come see him. Help!
Help!
The problem is that he actually likes it,
He does.
so don't be fooled.
He
Say
be
that.
over there cracking up. When he's covering his face, he is laughing. I just want everybody to know that.
Uh-huh.
I'm actually crying, actually.
You're so dramatic for no reason.
Anyways. But yes, so, out of all the sports balls out there that you can play, that you can watch, football.
Wait a minute. Did you just say sports balls?
Think about
Yes.
it. Baseball, football, basketball, soccer.
Okay.
Well, soccer.
I just had actually a friend come into, a former coworker come into work the other day to say hi. And we were like, hey, what you doing in this neighborhood? Because she now works way, way far away. And she was like, oh, my son's playing the sports balls. And we were like, which sports ball?
What?
We were like, which sports ball is he playing? And she's like, oh, he's on the freshman football team. And so,
First of all, how old is she?
a little older than me.
Oh, no excuse. That's what an old person would say. The sports balls. My grandbaby's over there playing with the sports balls. If we ever have kids, Eli, I just want you to know. My son plays the sports ball.
But it's also actually it's a very common term that like librarians and very nerdy people use to refer to sports.
Well, that makes sense.
I mean, I know Eli probably doesn't know this because he's a sports nerd. But
Yeah.
people who are extremely nerdy about things other than sports,
Sports.
and care less about sports, they all are the same thing. They all are sports, and most of them are play with balls.
Yes.
So it's a sports ball.
Is it wrong? Is it wrong, though?
This whole conversation
Okay,
is
so
wrong.
proving. Continue, ma'am.
Anyways, so yes, so we are talking about football, and all the things that Gina has been sitting there going, I don't get.
Mm-mm.
I don't get. So, like I said, watching the game, knowing how they score, and knowing some of the basics, offense, defense, and what side
Right.
of the ball is which, and whatever, are great places to start. If you've got that much down, you are doing great as a casual fan.
Yes, and that is where I am at with my understanding.
If you know how to listen to the announcers on TV, you can pick up a lot of things that way. There are still things, granted, that you can't pick up by just listening to the announcers.
Yeah, because some announcers are very detailed. Like, even if they've been announcing for years, like, that's just who they are. They'll go into, like, the specifics of certain things. And you're like, oh, that's awesome. Exactly.
Some of the announcers are like me. And
some are like Eli.
They're all about the nuance. And some are like Eli, and they throw all the information at you at once, and they see which parts of the spaghetti stick.
And it's like one strand.
Gina's like, I caught one!
That noodle about that roughing the passer? Got it. All the rest of that? I'm sure he said words. I don't know what those words meant.
So, last night, Gina and I were out at dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Well, truthfully, we were out waiting to get seated at a table at a restaurant.
I don't want to talk about it.
Takeout.
I don't want to talk about it.
They had staffing issues.
The girl was nice, though.
Yeah. But anyways, as we're sitting there waiting to be seated, we started talking about the show.
Mm-hmm.
And just in general, because I told her my idea for doing the behind the scenes and everything. And she was like, yeah, because, I've got questions. She's like, most of my questions right now are around blah, 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 blah. And then she goes, I said, well, something specific. And she's like, quarterback sneak. And I was like, what? And she goes, what's a quarterback sneak?
I mean, it just popped up. That was the first thing
It was the first thing that popped into her head out of all the things in the world.
That could have popped up.
And I was like...
Because I was reading that Jim Thorpe book. Yeah, maybe that's why.
And so I had to go into explaining to her what a quarterback sneak was.
Right.
And what sneak plays are.
And down the rabbit hole we went. Because I was like, wait.
Well, we started.
Yeah.
And then I said, let's hold this for the show.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
but that is exactly the kind of stuff that happens. So as we're going through today, and as Dr. Robinson will inevitably start saying things that Gina goes, I don't get. We are going to write them down in a notebook that I have now labeled the foosballs questions.
She wrote it. It's literally written that way in a notebook.
Because I'm a dork.
Because I would do the same thing.
You guys are pissing me off right now.
I'm choking. Excuse me.
Because I'm a dork.
She wrote it. I'm crying. I shouldn't have done my makeup before the show. Okay.
So, quarterback sneak.
Yes. Okay. And I kind of throughout this, I want to look over at Dr. Robinson and be like, do you know what that is?
Yes.
Can you explain it to me?
Yes.
And make it make sense?
Yes.
Try it.
Okay. Well, quarterback sneaks it up the middle, or takes
Pause. He said up the middle. I kind of know what that means.
Between the, basically a quarterback sneak is when the quarterback actually keeps the ball and runs with it. Either up the middle between the center or his right or left tackle.
Okay.
Or he'll, go to the outside.
Would you like the more simplified answer?
Go.
And slightly more detailed. That is when, as you're looking at the play on the field, it looks like there's a running back behind the quarterback, or possibly somebody that he's going to hand the ball off to.
Mm-hmm.
He will try to make it look like he actually has handed that ball off.
Right.
And then he will run with the ball, usually somewhere in the middle of the line.
Okay.
He doesn't try to make it all the way around.
He's not like a wide receiver who goes out.
Right. Well, or a running back trying to make it around the edge.
Okay.
He's
we'll get to that
trying
too.
to go through the middle, hopefully not over or into a pile, because you never want your quarterback at the bottom of the pile.
No, I do know that. But I would like to pause there and just be like, do you guys see the difference between... And Eli, your explanation did make sense, but then she went into specifics. Like, my brain works off specifics. And that's why I know Eli hates when I ask questions. He can't stand it. But Amy's the opposite. I could be like, well, first of all, she could look at my face and just know I'm not there. Starting to check out. Wait, hold on, Gina. Let's back up 4 steps. A quarterback is. No.
Although we will have questions about
positions and whatnot.
And whatnot in
My
different
laptop
terms.
somehow just died. Keep going.
we're talking about these things, I will say, over the years, I have figured out different ways to explain things that most people don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Eli probably is used to talking to other sports people,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You're used to dealing with people who already have a base of knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And you're like, this is the way to explain it because I don't have to figure out any other way to explain it.
Right. Exactly.
I mean,
And-
I
And
could-
you're sitting there trying, and I could see you trying,
Mhm.
okay? And I will give you that. You were trying because you're trying to figure out, because you could even start to see that Gina didn't know quite what you were talking about.
Yeah.
And you were trying to find ways to explain it, but you were still using inside terminology,
Mhm.
okay?
It's
and-
force to habit.
Yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. And that's not a bad
everybody
thing.
has it, okay? I'm going to relate this back to my own learning experiences, right? So when I was becoming a personal trainer, my trainer for planks for years always just said shoulders over hands,
Right.
shoulders over hands, shoulders over hands.
Mm-hmm.
I was so tired of hearing shoulders over hands.
If you don't tell me what the hell that means.
And so one day, as I'm doing my plank, an elbow plank, and he told me I had good form,
Mm-hmm.
I looked at the placement of everything underneath me as I'm holding the plank, and I realized there was an easier way for me to line myself up.
Right.
A week later, I'm working with a friend of mine at the gym who he also had been saying for years,
Shoulders
shoulders
over
over
hands.
hands, shoulders over hands, shoulders over hands. Or shoulders over elbows if you're on an elbow plank.
Right, right.
And again, it never clicked for her.
Mm-hmm.
So I told her what I realized, my
Right.
little trick. The next time we went to class together, he was like, by God, you guys have it. And I was like, yeah. He's like, all those years of me saying this to you, it finally clicked. And I
The
was
struggle.
like, and I looked at her, she looked at me, and she was like, do we say something? I said, yeah.
Aw.
Because, he's like a brother to me, and I
Yeah.
have to, keep him down a notch every so often. So,
Look at his face. Says
I
the
mean-
person who posts animal pictures of his sister, and vice versa. But I continue. Continue, Amy.
She started it.
So anyways, so I looked at him, and I looked at her, and I was like, go ahead and tell him how it clicked for you. And she looked at me and said, Amy gave me her secret. Amy explained it in a better way. And he was like, what other way is there to explain it? And so I said, well, basically, when I was on my elbow plank and I had my hands together for the plank, my thumbs lined up in a specific way where there was a small gap in between them.
Right.
If you look straight down that seam in between your thumbs, then your shoulders and your arms are in perfect alignment.
And now you have to, everybody who's listening is looking. Link your fingers together and look. Like, oh, there is one.
So that is what has kept me in perfect alignment. And once I was able to get that alignment on the elbow plank, I could hold
On
it
the
into
hands.
the shoulder,
Right.
into the hand plank. So, but that's just to say that sometimes we get so stuck in saying something the same way over and over and over again because that's the way that we're taught to teach it, or that's the way that it's always been explained.
All right. Or that we understand it.
Right. That we don't take the time to think if there's a better way to explain it.
Right.
And I'll have you know, he doesn't know this, but I did catch him a couple of times with people who were having issues use that little trick.
Oh.
I'm just going to say it.
Ah, vindication.
Right.
The ultimate vindication.
So
I don't need to tell you I told you so, but I told you so.
But that's the whole thing, is that's what we're doing. That's what the whole point of the show was.
Right.
anyways.
And,
So, as I said, I pretty much am looking at Gina going, what are your questions? And that's what today is. This is how we plan the shows.
Mhm.
What are your questions? And then then at the end of the show today, we're going to look back at the notes and figure out how to further explain things.
Right.
There will be explanation on some of the easier questions that Gina has.
That you
I
both can
will
answer.
say.
Eli, that does not exclude you. I don't want you to feel like because we did that little segment there, but it was a really good way to explain, like, sometimes how I feel when I talk to you, because I do want to understand what you're saying, and I can pick up enough to play along, but if it gets any more specific, I'm not going to be able to say anything. I'm going to get real quiet like I'm not listening, because I kind of not. And not because I don't care, but because I don't know.
And there really is only so much we can do with all of these things. But, like,
Right.
yeah, so, you know, as we get our different questions going, so, again, I open the floor up to you, G. What are some things recently that you've gone, I don't understand?
Somebody please explain to me, what is the difference between a running back and a wide receiver? They both run. I always thought the wide receiver just went wide, but apparently that's not just what they do. So somebody explain that difference.
Okay.
We're not going to get too detailed into the other positions because I don't know what
yeah.
anybody does, but except for the quarterback.
The basic difference between
Okay.
a running back and a wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Running backs don't catch balls.
Never knew that. Never would have guessed that. I
Right.
thought anybody
And
could.
It's not. That's the generalization.
Right, that's the generalization.
I'm not going into specifics. We'll hit up the positions in a
different
specific
show. Look at Eli. He was
Eli
like,
got
I'm about
all
to
mad.
go into it. No.
He started to do his Koopa Troopa thing.
Down, boy. Sit,
Started
boo
to
boo,
look
sit.
like Browser. He was just.
Now it's stuck in my head.
But anyway,
Halloween costume. I'll be Peach. No, I'll be Daisy. I'll be ethnic Peach.
I will be probably Toadstool or yeah. Anyways,
Moving
on. Generalization. Running backs, they can occasionally catch like shovel passes and stuff. Sometimes they do catch on a trick play.
Okay.
Okay. But for the most part, they are not.
Hold it in, Eli. Hold it in.
For the most part, they're not catching balls. The whole reason why they're called a running back is because the ball is handed to them and they run.
Oh, got it.
The wide receiver catches. His job is catching the ball. Quarterback throws down to the wide receiver to catch.
Gotcha. Okay.
Again, generalizations, Eli.
Look
Now,
at his
okay,
leg. He can see his pants.
Eli is about to blow up, so I'm going to let him say something.
I knew this was going to happen, and I couldn't wait. I told you yesterday he's going to lose his mind.
Yes, generalization. The running back does
Wait.
run the ball.
Hold on. He went from, like, I thought he was going to get on the mic all, like, and he was like, by the way, this is PBS Radio.
Welcome back to NPR.
Yeah, generalization. Yes, the running back does run the ball. On some plays, they catch the ball, and wide receiver. As far as wide receivers, they can run the ball as well on some plays.
So it's very play dependent.
Right.
Okay.
Yes,
But overall, that's
Overall,
The general-
Yeah, that's the
overall, your
generalization.
running backs aren't your best catchers.
okay.
You tend to make your receivers out of the kids that can catch the best,
Makes sense.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Your wide receivers may actually be tall and lanky because they need to be able to reach up and catch that ball. Okay.
Yeah.
Whereas your running backs are generally shorter because
Mhm.
they need to get through the middle of that pile.
So it needs a, as I've
Lower
heard them say,
center of-
punch.
Right, and they need a lower center of gravity
Right.
Okay. Makes sense.
because it's harder to knock down somebody who has a lower center of gravity.
So that's why
Right.
you see running backs are 5'9", 5'8". Wide receivers like 6'4", 6'5", 6'3".
And especially in more recent years,
Mhm.
there's a lot of crossover between basketball and wide receiver position.
Exactly.
Wait,
So a lot-
pause. What?
Yes.
Yes.
A lot of your wide receivers in the NFL were playing basketball in college and high school.
So wait.
Have you ever heard of a player called Antonio Gates?
Yeah.
He was a forward for the Kent State Flash.
So how does that transition happen?
So, well,
Because
what I
have
will
they ever
say-
played football
well,
at some point?
Here's the thing, and this is an issue that a lot of sports are having right now
Mm-hmm.
because parents are starting to specialize their kids so young
Ah.
sports injuries are more prevalent in high school than they've ever been because if you specialize too early, your bones and your joints don't develop right.
Because they're being trained in that specific way.
Right.
Ah, okay.
So, in fact, LeBron, who actually played football in high school.
He was a tight end.
Another question. Hold on to that thought.
And most of your NFL players, most of your NBA players, I don't know so much about like hockey and some of the others.
Yeah.
But even in baseball, especially for the pitching positions, your big name players have all talked about more recently about the fact that they did not specialize until they got to high school.
Right.
So if you're specializing a kid at 10 to only play this one sport and this one position.
Right. You're wearing that.
You're wearing their bodies out in a way that should not be happening.
Right.
It's also the reason I have issues with schools that set up team-specific weight rooms for junior high. Mm-hmm. And they're out there. Euclid lets the 8th graders do specific football training all year round.
Wow.
8th graders, 9th graders, 10th graders should not be doing sports-specific training all year round.
That's crazy.
But the reason they do it is because it's one way that they can keep those kids' grades up. They're not allowed to train unless their grades are up.
So it's a motivator for them to keep their...
And all of these kids think that if they train year-round, they're going to be drafted or they're going to go to a high school
basically
and get a scholarship.
It's a pipeline. It basically is a pipeline.
Right. They're trying, and these kids think that way, but what actually would be better for them is if they cross-train.
I was about to say, because when I was in high school, when all of us were in high school, most athletes played multiple sports. Like when one season ended, somebody was going into track or somebody was going into baseball.
So what we do, we pick these kids on our top 25 on Choir Brothers. And there's one kid we have on our top 25, Kyon Mason, tremendous athlete. He is a two-sport athlete, so he is track and field, but he also plays wide receiver for the St. Ed's Equals.
I can see how those two married together.
Yeah, so a lot of times you'll have something like that where you've got a track and field guy. In fact, there are a couple of NFL guys who went to the Olympics for track and field.
What?
Yeah. And so...
Oh, that's kind of cool, though.
And Anthony Schwartz of the Cleveland Browns is one of them.
Oh, wow.
So you've got to think about not only, training for one specific sport, but training, for a couple of different sports. Like I said, you and I, when I went to school, I went to a very small school, so most kids played. I know people who played two sports in the same season.
Oh, I can see that because you're the size of your school.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have had, a particular
players.
team or whatever.
Right.
Like we didn't have a JV team because we didn't have enough football players. So we had JV cheerleaders. We didn't have a JV football team.
Well,
okay.
There are more women in the world than men, so.
So it was, we had a lot of people. I knew people who played basketball and wrestling, and basketball and wrestling are both winter sports.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you think about the different ways you have to train your body to do those two different sports, you're doing your body a favor by not specifying it. But, to get back to some of our original thought on that, you have these crossovers between the sports because of the shapes of the bodies and the way that they work. And if you're playing basketball and there's no chance of you getting into the NBA, you may look at some football, and you've probably, again, different generations, you've probably, especially the ones that are there now, have played at least, high school ball at some point.
Right.
And if you are 6'2" and you are used to jumping for basketballs, how, other than the fact that you're adding the weight of the pads, how easy is it going to be for you because you already have the jumping muscles to jump up and get the football so your quarterback can throw it higher in the air?
Which means that your legs are already strong enough to support the fact that you have on extra pads anyway. Right. So it's not like it's going to be like tearing up your back or anything. That's interesting.
So you know how power forwards and basketball box out, get the rebound? So it translates to football as well.
Okay.
As a receiver, you want to box out, or a tight end, you want to box out, but you want to jump for that rebound. So it's like catching a football.
Right.
Ah.
You want to jump up, catch the ball, and bring
Bring it in.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Interesting. This is really cool. I had no idea. I mean, I know there's athletes who crossed over sports and stuff like that, but I never knew about the whole, they're just going from like straight from one sport to another sport. I just figured they had experience in both and they just picked one.
Can I just name a couple of athletes that?
Go ahead. Get it out your system.
So, you got Antonio.
Water break.
Wait, I was going to say, I'm going to take my water break.
So you had Antonio Gates, who actually played for the Kent State Flash. Got drafted by the San Diego Chargers as a tight end.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill. Have you ever heard of Tyreek Hill?
Yeah, I've heard of all these names so far.
So he used to play for the Kansas City Chiefs, but he also ran track.
Okay.
At Oklahoma State.
So in college he ran track.
Yes.
Did he play football?
Yes, he did.
Oh, okay.
He was a 2-star athlete.
That's interesting. I can see it in high school, but it's always interesting when colleges, especially if it's like one of their, do they let their star players do that too for the sake of like being able to train? They let them do multiple sports? Because my first thought is, oh God, they get hurt. You know what I mean?
Well, that's kind of like even going back to the Pop Warner
exactly.
Jim Thorpe story where he didn't want his star track athlete to get hurt in football. Especially with what we know nowadays, and sports injuries and the likelihood of injuries if you're not cross-training.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be cross-training was just the way because athletes couldn't get into their weight rooms and couldn't get into the workout spaces off of season.
Gotcha. So it's just their way of being able to continue to train.
Right.
Whose phone was that?
Not mine.
I don't think it was me.
That
Was
wasn't-
it you?
No, it wasn't my phone.
My phone is on absolute silent.
So is mine. Mine's in my back pocket.
Ding yourself, because
Ding
it had to be
yourself.
you.
Nope, that's not me. I didn't get any notification.
I don't know. Just ding it. Somebody did
you
it.
know what? There you go.
See, mine was in my back pocket, so it's not me. So anyway,
Right, moving on.
So yeah, that was cross training. Doing different sports was a way of keeping fit in the off season.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
Now, again, in the 90s, through the 2000s, in the younger age groups, kids were always being trained. So it's not so much when you talk about your kids that are only part of like the Pee Wee leagues or
Right.
community leagues,
I
but if
figured.
you've got kids that are heavy on the travel teams,
Yeah.
their parents may be paying for a specific coach.
Like if they play AAU when they're really, really young.
Right. Parents may be, like, if they're playing baseball, travel league, their parents may be actually paying for a hitting coach for them.
Oh, wow.
Their parents may be paying for sports-specific physical training in the off-season. The YMCA had those actual programs.
That's true. They did.
So, like, you could come into the YMCA and get a trainer for your kid that was specifically trained for basketball. Here's the issue that I had when they were actually, trying to push that and they were, marketing it. I said, the problem is any of us that are worth our salt are going to be training that kid for everything else, too.
Right. Because we know how training works.
Because we don't want to put strain on the 12-year-old's muscles.
Right.
And joints and all that other stuff.
Right.
Like,
Their body shouldn't be taking that wear and tear.
right.
You know, Max Stevens, the head coach of the Cleveland Heights football team, varsity, he actually has his own sports academy,
Okay.
and he trains like different athletes or whatnot, multiple athletes as well. So
Right.
Shout out to Coach Stevens.
But because he trains multiple athletes, I'm sure he knows how to train all athletes
Yes.
across the board and cross-train them.
Yep.
Right, because the other issue that a lot of schools have,
Yeah.
especially for the high school kids, is that the coaches
Are the
and
trainers.
the trainers are all people who have been former players
Yep.
and don't
Yes.
necessarily have an education in it. And they're just having these kids do the same exercises that they did when they were in high school 25, 30, 35, 40 years ago.
Exactly.
Which have now been proven either A, ineffective, or B, hurtful.
Right. Dangerous in some cases.
And it's the same issue I have when I watch kids training for boxing or any of those sports that are built on tradition. Just because that's the way you learned how to do it doesn't mean it should still be done that way, because it could actually be potentially dangerous.
Right.
And you have to play to
Right.
the strengths of that actual athlete.
Exactly. So,
So, but if you're if you have people that aren't actually
Trainers, right?
Haven't taken classes, haven't learned how to do this, then again, you wind up with those tradition-built exercises instead.
Right.
And that's just me getting off on a tangent about safety in these sports, especially when we're talking about kids. But
That's a show for another day.
yes. So next question, Gina. I mean, 20 minutes later.
Well, this is how it works. We wanted to let them know, like, this is how our thoughts, because this is even how we create ideas for new shows out of the subject matter we're trying to figure out. So, sorry, I was writing down that idea. I think that's a really good idea to talk about. So next question. Fullback versus cornerback. They have backs. I know that.
I will say
they wear
this
football
is probably one
gear.
that I've not paid as much attention to. I believe are they both defensive positions?
Did you say fullback and cornerback? No, they're two opposite positions.
Okay.
Fullback plays the offense role, and then cornerback is on defense. So the fullback basically protects the running back as he's running.
Okay.
And the cornerback basically guards the wide receiver.
Okay.
Or, a tight end or whatnot. Whatever scheme, whatever defensive scheme that,
I knew cornerback was defense. Wasn't certain
whatever
about fullback.
whatever defensive scheme that the defensive coach wants.
Okay.
That's what the cornerback plays. But mainly his job is to guard the wide receiver.
Now, are these two different people? Like,
Yes.
does anybody
Yes.
ever play both sides of the ball? Is that a common thing, or do you see that?
Actually,
There are a couple players, but it's not very, very common.
Actually, let me comment on that. As far as both sides, it was a player at Ohio State named Chris Gamble. Okay, he played both sides of the ball. So he played cornerback, and then he played wide receiver.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, right, because you would want the person who's guarding against the wide receiver has to be as fast as the wide receiver.
Oh, makes sense. Okay.
Because they're following them out the field.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the thing is that it was much more common in the early days of football. It's not as common nowadays.
That's what
only because you don't want to. You want to reduce the amount of play time in order to guard against injuries.
Makes sense. Okay.
And if they're playing both sides of the ball, then that's considered. It's a term called Iron Man football. So, playing both sides of the ball.
Oh, is that like kind of frowned upon, or?
No, not really. If you don't have enough players on your team,
you just got to make it happen.
Yeah, you just got to make it happen. That's playing Iron
Okay.
Man football.
Like I said, it's not very common.
No,
it's
not.
harder for a player to do in today's age, especially with the current bargaining agreements.
Okay.
Only because of the limited amount of time on field and
Right.
things like that.
Right.
So they are limited to how much time they can spend out on the field, or does it depend on the flow of the game?
It depends on the flow of the game. Like, you're not going to pull somebody unless they're injured or they're on
Right.
a clock because of an injury.
Right.
But basically, the way things work, the Players Association is looking at ways to make it safer for each player, and the biggest way is to limit the amount of time on field. That's why they've gone to a 3-game preseason. That's why
Okay.
there's only so much they can do in training camp. They can only have so many days in full pads. They can only have so many days that are full contact.
Okay. Okay.
All of that. So again, it's not something that you can't do, even by the negotiations, but it's harder to do only because you've negotiated for so much of a restriction on the things you can do
Right.
Right.
in order to provide safety, that then the team owners are like, yeah, we know you can play both sides of the ball, but
It's a double-edged
we're gonna
sword.
have you
Sort
play
of.
So
this side.
when you talk about player safety, this year in the NFL, actually it's a really good idea. They actually invented like a foam covering for the helmet to reduce like concussions when that, but only the defensive players get the and the offensive linemen, anybody that's actually creating a lot of contact, get to wear these little foam helmet things on.
Is it inside their helmet?
No, it's outside their helmet.
So they've been doing lots of research.
It is awesome, like, honestly.
And for the past 4 years, there have been like 3 or 4 players on each team, or 3 or 4 positions on each team,
Right.
that get these special helmets with sensors in them
Oh.
to show which positions, which players, and what kinds of contact each of these positions have.
Right.
And they've been working, the helmet teams, the helmet producers have been working on ways to make things better on the inside, on the outside. So this is one of the things that they're trying. And all of those special helmets also have sensors in them.
That's really
so
cool.
they can see in-game play. A few years ago, they had helmets for the quarterbacks that had sensors in them that were supposed to show if quarterback potentially had whiplash or concussion that wouldn't have been normally caught because it had nothing to do with the impact on the helmet. It had to do with the fact that when a quarterback's getting sacked,
Yeah.
their head whips back and forth
Right.
without
Right.
even contacting the ground or anything else. And so they wanted to see how much motion was going on in the helmet
Right.
that wasn't on the outside of the helmet.
It's almost like when you get in a car accident and your body snaps because
Right.
the momentum just automatically comes
Exactly.
to an end.
That's-
Okay.
So that's actually
Yeah.
another topic we can talk about is technology in football.
I wrote down player safety through the ages.
So that's why in practice the quarterback only wears a red jersey, meaning you can't,
can't
touch
touch
the
me.
quarterback.
Oh, I thought red shirting is not just like newbie players. Is that
No,
what?
no.
No.
That red shirting is
something
in
different.
college. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
in college.
Sidebar. Go ahead.
Which,
But
you know,
if-
is a whole
if-
different you
So
know,
if
set
the
of
quarterback
things.
is wearing a red jersey in
Yeah.
practice, you don't touch him.
Does he always wear one?
Yes.
Nah,
Yes.
not-
Yep. Nope. Yep. Yes.
no,
he
no,
does.
no. He doesn't always wear it because they do have days where they have full contact and everything else. But when they are not doing full pads and full contact, he always has it on. Or if he's been injured in some way,
Right.
he'll have it on even over pads.
Okay.
Because, again, it's don't touch this dude, he's recovering. Because I've seen them practicing with the quarterback in a regular uniform.
Okay.
So they
Okay.
don't always have him in the red shirt, but there's also an unspoken thing that as a defensive player, you don't actually want to sack your
You
own
don't
quarterback.
exactly. You
And
just
if
don't
you
do that.
If you do, you will be punished.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, especially if he is in that red shirt, but if he's not, you may not officially be punished, but your locker room's not going to be very friendly for a couple days.
You know what? Excuse my French. If you sack the quarterback in practice, you will get your ass whooped.
If you injure your own quarterback in practice,
Right.
your locker room's not going to be friendly.
How much of an idiot would you feel like if you were the one who caused your quarterback to have whiplash or something?
I mean, honestly, I've not really heard the things that usually you hear about happening with quarterbacks in practice are usually more of a broken finger,
Yeah.
or something like that.
Okay. Okay.
You don't hear a whole lot about other things. Even back in the day before they did the red shirt thing, in the Kozar days and stuff,
right.
because you don't want to injure your own quarterback. Even when
It
you're
seems
playing
so
on the
logical,
practice team,
right.
because you're not playing your full defense, you're playing the practice team defense. Your practice team is like, yeah, no, we can't, we're not touching.
There's no way. Are you kidding? We would eventually want to be like
right,
starters.
and usually what it is somebody's momentum has taken them a little too far, and they weren't able to stop in time or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
It's not usually like somebody's going all out trying to tackle your quarterback.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Makes
But,
sense.
yeah, we can talk about technology and football in the future. Okay.
Okay. All right. So switch gears a little bit because I get really confused when they talk about certain kinds of plays, like as they're going through, like they're getting ready to run a screen or something like that. So what is a screen? Let's start there.
So again, simple definition is they've set up a play so that there are basically screens of players in between your receiver and your quarterback, so that the defense can get thrown off by who is going to actually be receiving.
So is it almost like layers of people?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar to a screen pass in basketball, where you've got people running
Oh.
in different areas and different pathways,
Yeah.
and you can then pass to the close guy, the far guy.
Oh, so it's a way of just kind of confusing
Uh-huh.
the other team to be like, well, they're not running a
It's
usual.
like playing a shell game.
Okay.
I mean, again, oversimplified definition.
Well, that's what we need right now.
I'm not laying out the X's and O's if we want an X's and O's. I mean, honestly, should we eventually tell Dr. Robinson to bring in his X's and O board?
I guess maybe.
Yeah.
One of these days, like he's just sitting there waiting for us to say, yes, you can bring in your X's and O's board, and then I think he's going to do the hamster dance for us.
No.
I knew that was coming. I was waiting. But yes, you can. When we get, I think we should probably do a show about common terms as far as plays go, because obviously, like, there's blanket terms like a sneak, but there's a quarterback sneak, and then there's other types of sneaks. We talked about this the other day. So maybe like the common terms. I mean, and some of the common plays you'll see or hear about during a game.
Yeah, I mean, or the different type of formations as well.
Yeah,
exactly. Because that was the other thing, is that when you brought up the cornerback, it reminded me of the conversation we had yesterday where I was like, yeah, like, honestly, until years ago, first off, until a few years ago, and by few, I mean probably a decade and plus, I mean, years. Well, after you hit 35, time passes differently.
Listen, I just turned 35, so
what seems like 5 years ago was actually like 15. So,
sad when the moment I can remember saying I can remember 15 years ago, I was like, oh God, I'm old.
So, I will say that forever when I was young, I was so confused because I was like, we're playing defense, but they're talking about a quarterback. It took me forever to realize that they were talking about a cornerback. Okay? I thought they were saying quarter.
Right. Especially because they're probably saying it so quick.
They're saying it very fast, and I'm not catching it. And I was like, but are there two quarterbacks? Especially because then they would throw out things like the dime back and the nickel back. And I'm like, and I said Nickelback, and Gina goes, that's a band, Amy. That's not a football player.
That's not a football player, Amy. It's a band. I know you're trying to trick me.
And I was like, no, it is. And so we looked it up at the restaurant, and it's what you call your cornerback in specific types of defenses.
Right.
And so, again, it all has to do with, like, are you a 4-3 or 3-4 or, whatever. And, are you playing the dime package, the nickel package? I don't understand. I can't even look at the field and figure out what package. I believe whatever it is that Troy Aikman is telling me is what I believe.
That is what's happening on that field right now.
Because I have no idea by looking at where they're standing what it is. I know the difference between a regular pass and a shotgun pass.
Yeah.
There you go.
I can tell when they're lined up in a shotgun formation, but that's about it.
You got one up on me because I would have no clue.
It is definitely one of those things where there are so many nuances. Again, because it's a cornerback, but he has a special name when it's in a special type of package for the defense.
Right. Can you imagine watching TV and, like, all of a sudden they're like, and the Nickelback. Wait, pause. What's the lead singer's name from Nickelback?
I actually have no idea.
You don't know?
Nope.
Oh, my God.
I was not a Nickelback fan.
I just figured you'd know because, elephant. But anyway, can you imagine, like, for me as, like, a casual fan, if somebody was like, okay, the dime back, whoa. The what?
Well, not only that, but, like, the first couple times, especially if you're not a fan, you might instead hear nickel bag or dime bag, and you're like, wait, they're selling pot on the field now?
Dime bag? What happened to football? And you, like, turn on, you hit the, like, guide on your TV, like, am I still watching the same game?
Like, wait, is Snoop Dogg in the field? but no.
Walking down the field.
I mean, he was at last year's Super Bowl.
I mean, facts, and he did crip walks.
But anyways, so yeah, we will definitely touch on the plays and the different types of players and the different positions, and the different packages for things.
What is a package versus like a formate? Is this the same thing? Are these like
so? Yes and no. The formations are the specifics of that particular play within a package.
Okay, what's a package? Is that
So Eli may actually have a better definition, but from what I understand, again, this is just, because I never actually played. This is just me being a cheerleader on the sidelines.
Right.
Is that the package is more of an overall defensive ideal.
Okay.
So you may have 4 or 5 sets of packages that will each have maybe 1 or 2 formations in them.
Oh.
So basically your formations can change at when you're sitting there and you're watching, and now they've got microphones that can pick up everything.
Yeah.
So as you're hearing, the quarterback down there, Omaha, right? Y'all know who I'm talking about.
Yes, we do.
Peyton Manning.
As he's sitting down there, screaming his Omahas.
Right.
Watch the defensive line, too. Now, they may not always have it on the screen because they usually try to focus in on the quarterback or whatever. But sometimes they will, especially if it's like your home team and you're watching the local coverage. The defensive players have a captain on the defensive line, too.
Okay.
And that guy is standing there yelling out directions. And you'll see people scrambling and running and changing where they are based on what he's seen across the field from them. So they line up one way.
Right.
Based on what the previous plays have been and everything else and what they've been shown.
Right.
And what they expect to happen
based
on their scouting.
Guess.
And then when they're standing there and they see what's lined up across from them, they start yelling out different things.
So go ahead.
Yes, you are right as far as what you just said, but also the defensive captain is the one that has the radio in his helmet. And the defense coordinator is,
yelling things at him, too.
I didn't know there was a guy on the other side who was almost like the quarterback, but on the defense.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense because how would anybody know what to do? Because it's not like everybody can see all the way down the line.
Right. So there may even be like 2 or 3 captains on the defense side, but whoever is the most senior one that's on the field, because they'll have, a couple of them in case that person gets injured.
Right. Makes sense.
So I believe, Myles Garrett has been one of our captains on the defensive line for a while.
If you see a C on the actual jersey, that means he's a captain.
And I always thought, it sounds stupid, but I always thought like the quarterback was the captain. I knew there was multiple captains.
He's the captain of the offense.
He's the captain of the offense. But even then, there's also a captain of the offensive line.
Okay. So he's like the captain, and then like the captain of the offensive line is like the first mate.
Yes.
He's the number one.
Usually
that's your center.
Okay. Is he
so usually
right
your
there
center
next to the quarterback?
Do we have to explain what a center is?
You already knew the answer to that question when you asked it.
So the guy that hikes the ball.
Oh, he's the center. Never knew that.
Because he's the center of the line.
You want to know what's really sad? When I was in college, my degree is in athletic training. I worked with the football team for a whole season. If they had said, Gina, go check on the center, I'd be like, who's that? What number? Just tell me what number to go check on.
He's the guy who has the ball before he sends it. He's the guy who has the quarterback's hands in between his legs.
I knew that part.
If you ever see in the game, the center is crouched down. With
I know
the ball,
who it is. I just never knew that was
his
his
doing
position.
this.
Yeah,
he's doing this. That means he's anticipating what the
he's
watching
the defense.
He's directing
and
traffic.
He may be pointing things out to the quarterback who's paying attention to where he's pointing because the quarterback's trying to focus on that ball. He doesn't want to be looking around all the time.
Right. He can't.
Well, you've seen what happens when the quarterback's still looking around and the center hikes.
Yeah. It never ends well.
Bum, bum, bum. Bum, bum, bum. Yeah. If you live in Cleveland, you know.
You're very familiar. Very familiar.
Don't say it.
I don't even know what year it was, but there was that year that the ball wound up going back into the end zone and over the
Wait, what? How far away from the end zone were we?
Like 5 yards.
5 yards.
And it went over the quarterback's head and back into because he
wasn't paying attention.
He wasn't paying attention. He hadn't called for the hike yet. The center hiked it because we were running out of time on the play clock. And
he's not supposed to do it until the quarterback tells him to, right?
Yes.
Technically, yes. there's controversy because half the players said that they heard the quarterback call for it, but the other half said they didn't. And yeah, it was.
Maybe that's a show of some sort. Greatest football flops. And the controversy that surrounds them. You guys both look so depressed by this. So we're going to move on. I think Eli might cry.
We only have a couple more minutes anyways.
Right.
Right, Eli?
5. Well, there you go. You know, you could have just said yes.
Sorry, producer.
Nah, he wants to be extra.
Yeah, true.
So, yeah. So, yeah. So the center is that person. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So this is why we need a position show.
Well, and you got to think, like, we literally just went from the 80-man roster to 53.
Why'd they cut it down?
You have to have.
That's the standard.
The standard is 53 through the season. You start off with like 90 at the beginning of training camp, and maybe even more, and you have to whittle it down to 80 by a certain day, and then you have to go down to 53.
Oh.
Most of the people who are in that last round of cuts wind up on your practice squad.
Okay, I got you. So is there ever a time when the practice squad is actually playing?
No.
They're not even your second string. They're just the people you practice against.
Yes.
Yeah. They don't even
Now,
travel
there
with the
have
team.
been people who have been brought up from the practice squad if they go through enough injuries.
Yeah.
They're, speaking as a Browns fan, experienced it.
What isn't there something that Browns fans can say, yeah, we were there before?
It's very rare because usually they try to get a free agent first. But if it's a last-minute thing, they will pull people up.
Interesting. Maybe we should leave it at this question because I sense the tangent coming on. But do you ever see it where a practice squad person shows such a great effort that they're like, you need to be at least second string?
So you will find that occasionally. Usually it waits until the next season.
Okay.
That's part of the reason why guys stay on practice squads is so that they can work their way onto a team.
Do they get paid?
Yes. But nowhere near.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's something like.
They probably have like real people jobs.
It's something like $1,200 a week or something.
So like a stipend.
Right. And it's through the season. They don't get paid for when they're not.
It's probably more than that.
Well, I was going to say I think that was like a 1996 number. So
it's probably like $1,500.
Maybe 2,000 at this point. But I'd have to look at the PLA, the CBA of the players.
I'm gonna write that down as an idea, like the breakdown of like you got your first string, second string, practice squad. Okay, cool. Well,
we've reached the end of the show, and we haven't even finished a discussion as to what we may be going to next.
I think we have a lot to go off of, though.
But I hope this has been enlightening to you all as far as how the actual conversations go.
And you can see how each of our personalities play a role into forming these shows.
And hopefully we'll get better at keeping the actual questions that Gina's asking on record so that she can remember to ask them.
Hey, we wrote everything down today.
We did, for the most part.
Yeah, I think so.
So, this is Amy.
I'm Gina.
Dr. Robinson.
We want to thank you all for listening today. As always, you can reach out to us and leave us any comments you want. Wherever it is that you are listening to, we are paying attention.
Yes, and if there's things about football, even if you're an avid fan that you're like, I don't know, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Gmail, feel free to let us know, and we will see you on the next one. Bye, humans.